So they took the easy way out, dumping it on a so-called super committee to figure it out. But that didn't work either. The super committee could not do the job, and now the result, the automatic trigger is pulled, and the cuts are happening, of course, not until it's politically safe, until after the election. But now some are scrambling to spare $55 billion automatic budget cuts set to strike the Pentagon. House Republicans say they have a new plan to protect the defense budget, but Democrats say they're doing it on the backs of the poor. House Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy joins us, and you probably don't like my description of what went on, right? Is that fair, though, a little bit?
It's fair because it didn't happen. But you got to remember, how did the super committee ever come to pass? This is what Harry Reid asked for in the debt ceiling. He said this is all he wanted. And we said, why did you do this? And then when you look at what happened in the super committee, who put options on the table? Republicans actually wrote a plan, put it on the table. You had a Democrat, the number 2 in the House, Mr. Clyburn. He was on the show, a Sunday show, and he said Democrats have not offered anything. And the problem being is it took some Democrats to vote with Republicans to do something. So what is happening now is there's 6 committees. We're doing the work the super committee never would do. And that's a better way of going about looking at ways to make changes.
As I understand it, what's the most urgent thing, correct me if I'm wrong, is the House Republicans are trying to save the Pentagon from a $55 billion cut next year. Is that right?
Well, you look, sequestration, what happens in that process is they make the $1.2 billion cuts, and they do half to the military and half other places. They do the old Graham-Rudman approach. That's going right after the military. We're sitting in war. Look what happened with the CIA found today. Look at the $400 billion you're already cutting. It would take the Navy down to less than 230 ships,
well, even
smaller since 1915.
And even Defense Secretary Panetta is unhappy with it. I mean, the Defense Department's unhappy with it. All right, so the House has passed a bill today.
We have not passed a bill today. They've been in committee, 6 committees, and what it's looking at is where can
not
we
the House, but the committee, I meant.
Yeah, where can we find some fraud? Where can we tighten up, bring some accountability? And that's what we're going through.
Well, I got a list. Okay, here's a 2011 report from the bipartisan, like that word, Commission on Wartime Contracting, and they found a waste of more than $30 billion on contracts in Iraq and Afghanistan because of shoddy management, lack of competition, and that was an independent. That's $30 billion. I mean, there's money when you go through these waste and fraud.
There's a lot of places you can find it, and no one says the Pentagon shouldn't eliminate a lot of that. The difficulty is if you go and make these cuts just across the board the way you do it, you'll have an army smaller than since 1940. You'll have a navy smaller than 1915. You have to systematically look at what you're doing and the world and what we live in. And you can't continue to live and spend the way we've been spending. I mean, we're becoming France.
I think people agree that we can't, but you've got Congressman Steny Hoyer says the way to do it. He had a speech today, and he talks about he's calling on Americans to, quote, pay their fair share. So he wants to raise taxes. And then the Republicans
then what are they going to do with that money? They're going to raise taxes, and what are they going to do? How are they going to spend it? The Senate won't even produce a budget in 3 years.
Well, I know, but to see, in order to at least this shortfall, this sequestration problem, is that they want to raise taxes, and you want to do cuts, and part of your cuts will really hurt the very poor. You know, some of the entitlement, they're going to get hurt. And so I'm curious as to why you all don't get together. And I look at these numbers of where there's waste. Is why you can't all before even like raise taxes or cut to the very poor. It's just sort of begin to recover this waste and fraud.
That's exactly what we're going about, and that's why the process is working. Here's the House. The House has produced a budget that actually looks at where we can get rid of our debt and actually grow the economy. Look what happened to the economy in the last month. More people quit looking for a job. More than 340,000 than actually started working. So what we have to do is, if you take the budget of America, you have discretionary spending and mandatory spending. Discretionary spending is all your military and all your departments. Do you know if you wipe all that away today, you'd still have to borrow money? That's how far out of whack we are, and the Senate won't even produce a budget.
But if you look at even the Defense Department budget, and I don't want to make us weak. I want to be strong militarily. But when you look at things like, I mean, these earmarks they have, like for instance, in their most recent budget for 2012, they have $120 million for 3 earmarks of $40 million each for alternative energy research within the Air Force, Army, and Navy. Why in the world is our military doing the alternative energy research? I thought we had Solyndra for that one, I say sarcastically. Then we've got another $255 million for the upgrade of the M1 Abrams tank. and the tank has been suspended in production until 2017. So why are you spending $250 million to upgrade? I mean, there are all these numbers that are, you know, there's so much money here that just needs to be moved to the right places.
And that's exactly what the House is doing. That's why the House goes through committee by committee, where the Senate doesn't even produce a budget. What should happen each and every time? We need to bring accountability back to government. You should stop all the games they go for. The super committee was supposed to do something. It didn't act.
Well,
so now we're taken to the House and actually have committees.
But we had the super committee because last August is that the President and the House and the Senate couldn't do it, so they created this sort of, you know, thing to make everybody happy, the super committee.
But remember what happened in the process, what Republicans stood for. If the super committee didn't act, you still had the cuts. You've got to control what government is spending.
Right,
at the same time, you have to grow the economy.
But these cuts, I mean, these cuts, I mean, some of the cuts, I mean, just, you know, there's money sitting in our government. There's some fat that we can go
There's
recover.
A lot of fat
so we don't have to do
it.
some of these cuts. I mean, the fat is incredible.
Then you would support what we're doing. That's what we're doing, committee by committee.
Well,
That's exactly
I'm
what
all
you
for it,
like.
I mean, I got lists of it anyway.
Well, we're glad and excited to have you a part of it.
Anyway, nice to see you and good luck, and I hope you can find the fat, the fraud, and everything else in all these contracts.
I tell you, it's everywhere, and there's a great opportunity to bring greater accountability back to government. And we welcome anytime somebody on the other side of the aisle want to join us. We're more than welcome to be a part of it.
I'm sure in this environment they'll be happy to join you.
I would like to see it.
Congressman, thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up, the legal panel is here to tell you whether a woman defense lawyer is aggressive and respectful or in the